Crisis in the Cyril Ramaphosa camp again. What is the real story behind the president's 500,000 election donation U-turn? Is he lying about it, or is it an honest mistake? Johannesburg's controversial mayor, why does Herman Mashaba frequently lash out at foreigners? We have him here in the studio right now to tell us why he thinks it's a good idea. And Amnesty International has stripped Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi of a human rights award. They say it's because of atrocities committed against the Rohingya. So why on earth would South Africa keep quiet, abstaining from a UN vote condemning Myanmar's violations against the Rohingya? Are we aiding the country's genocide? Those are my questions for my panels tonight. What are yours? You can call us on 011-759-6340. You can also use the hashtag Tonight with Jane Dutton. But first, Shahan is standing by with the news.
Thanks, Jane. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, these are our top stories tonight. The International Monetary Fund says initial optimism about the South African economy recovering is fading. The findings come after an official delegation visited the country. It says governance issues must be addressed and business models of state-owned enterprises relooked at.
So there is specific reference in this report to Eskom. Public debt and contingent liabilities are expected to continue rising in line with expenditure trends on wages and the interest bill and the fragile financial positions of several SOEs, particularly Eskom, write the IMF staff who compiled this report. Weak growth and deteriorating public finances could trigger additional capital outflows, potentially creating adverse spillovers through the interconnected financial system. Space for continuing monetary policy support, they argue, is narrowing as inflation expectations get closer to the upper end of the 3 to 6% target band and US monetary policy tightens. And again, rising unemployment, they warn of, and inequalities could accelerate calls for populist initiatives on the political stage. So they're arguing there is a direct connection between the way in which these state-owned enterprises and their futures are handled and the feeding in to the rise of populist sentiment on the political stage that the South African government and the ANC is now risking.
There's our US correspondent Simon Marks. To the story now, Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan told the State Capture Commission of Inquiry the proposed nuclear energy deal with Russia would have cost South Africa much more than initially anticipated. Gordhan says even though the price was estimated to be 1 trillion rand, it would have probably worked out to far more than that.
The President and the Department of Energy were pursuing the procurement of 9.6 gigawatts of power from Russia, and that it might amount to a cost of about 1 trillion rands. I've just done a little bit of homework to illustrate what does 1 trillion rands mean in relation to that particular fiscal year. So let me offer you some numbers. So, and remember that in big projects, your initial cost is never your eventual cost. So that's 1 trillion to start with. If you take Medupi and other such projects as an example, the fuel pipeline from Durban to Gauteng is yet another example of that, where costs escalate and sometimes even scope escalates or changes as well. But let's compare the 1 trillion rand expenditure to what the budget framework looked like in the fiscal year 2011-2012. So the anticipated revenue in that year was 824 billion, plus minus. 824 billion, total revenue. You can add to that borrowing of 154 billion. The total expenditure would have been about 979 billion. So your total budget for that fiscal year was less than 1 trillion rands. So you're talking about one project that's equal to your entire expenditure budget for that year. Just to give you some sense of proportion.
Well, the figure of 1 trillion rand isn't the only astronomical thing in our top stories tonight. Transnet pensioners have been in a legal battle with the utility for a 100 billion rand over a decade now. They say the SOE has backtracked on a promise to fully pay out their pensions. Transnet is now offering a once-off payment.
Transnet is negotiating with the representatives of the class action and is putting forward a proposal to make a once-off bonus payment to the pensioners to address some of the empathy that we as an employer have towards the beneficiary of these funds. But to be clear, there is no legal demand in either of the two claims. Is that Transnet is extremely empathetic to the position of its pensioners, which is why we are proposing the rule amendment. As a board, we are supporting the proposal that has come to us. That is supported by the trustees as well as the company. And that will give a more equitable annual adjustment to the payment and not limit us to the 2%.
There'll be more news at 9. I'm back at 10 with News Hour. For now, it's back to Jane.
Thanks a lot, Johan. He's a businessman, best known for his Black Like Me hair products. As the mayor of Johannesburg, he's best known for his comments on xenophobia and Ebola. The DA's Herman Mashaba shook up the political scene when he was elected the mayor of the city of Joburg in 2016. He has some interesting views on inner city regeneration, from hijacked buildings to the Joburg billing crisis. Mashaba has a lot to fix. Is he going to be able to do it? And are his comments fit for the mayor of South Africa's biggest metro? Herman Mashaba is my guest tonight. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to feature on your show. And I watch it all the time. Find it fascinating, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. I know you told me a little earlier you've got a very busy day, so let's get straight to it. Do you enjoy being controversial?
No, whatever. No, it's not about controversy. It's about actually doing the job that the executive mayor of a big city has to really do with massive challenges. So we can't operate on the basis of making friendships. We are on a basis of saving our residents. As residents are really desperate. You know, the housing backlog, you know, the infrastructure backlog, you know. I mean, every way it's a crisis, and for this crisis to be sorted out, and it's a crisis of a long haul. It's not something that I can fix in a year or two or even in 5 years. But I think what is important is to make sure that on a daily basis we make progress. It is for that reason.
There is a crisis there, everyone knows, when it comes to health and transport and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just wondering why you have to use the sort of xenophobic language in order to get your message across.
No, I think it's not really fair, Jane, to call it xenophobic. When you call for undocumented people in the country to be documented and people call this xenophobic, I think, honestly, let us be honest with one another as South Africans. We know we're sitting with porous borders. We have the most porous borders in the world. I mean, the city of Johannesburg is the biggest the casualty of this mismanagement of our country and our borders. We sit with so many people undocumented. And I'm calling on the Home Affairs ever since I took over office to say, please help us. And then obviously people, for their own political expediency, they call this xenophobic. How can this be xenophobic?
Okay, but I mean, as you know, it's a very fragile relationship. I'm sure I could come up with a better word, but a dangerous relationship between South Africans and foreigners. And when they hear that sort of language, I mean, it almost feeds into South Africans' belief that they can take action against foreigners. I mean, there's so many horrific scenes in 2008, that man burning on his bed. I mean, should remain in our brains, ingrained forever. When people hear you sort of, what they see is targeting foreigners, it gives them the go-ahead. I mean, you said as many as 80% of inner-city residents are undocumented foreigners. I mean, I believe that figure is not exactly true. But doesn't that turn people against others?
That figure that I've mentioned, I think, and you've got this sometimes so-called experts querying this. We're talking about the buildings that we rate. We find those kind of numbers. I'm not really saying for 1 minute that the city of Johannesburg has got 80% foreign nationals. Absolutely not. And most of.
But then why did you say that? Are you saying that the research you were given was wrong, or
what? We we are saying the rates that we do in hijack buildings, we find up to sometimes 80% of the people. This affects, it's not the research. This affects of buildings that we rate in the inner city of Johannesburg. So it's not something that you, then people then take it.
Joburg's awash with undocumented.
Yes, and then people then take this
siege.
in context because it suits them. The thing is, so you must understand, Jane, people, the criminal syndicates in this country have been benefiting out of this chaos, and they're working with some of the forces that do not want this to change. And unfortunately, it's going to change in the city of Johannesburg. We're calling on Home Affairs. Please, anytime any person arrives in our country, for whatever reason, they don't have the documentation. Please, the constitution of this country is very clear around who qualifies to get documentation. And those who don't really do not qualify, then the constitution of this country is very clear what the government should really do.
Okay,
and I don't understand why as a nation we must be scared to discuss these issues. Please go into our communities to go and really look at the living
I think we're fully aware of the problems, but what concerns me is this type of language and possibly getting facts out there that are incorrect. That can exacerbate the problem. Okay, let me ask you what you said in Rwanda. You know, you were at a conference there, and you taken advantage of their visa-free system where you can fly around Africa to the countries that have signed up, and you don't have to apply for a visa before you get there. And you went in there, got a visa there, and then spoke about the problems in the country, how, you know, you're talking about borders. When they come into South Africa, people must come in legally, respect the laws of our country. Doesn't that immediately make people think that foreigners who are coming in are firstly problematic? And isn't it shifting the blame? Because our Home Office is not doing it correctly because of corruption there.
Yeah, so then can it then be the responsibility of the city of Johannesburg, where for us to be able to provide services when we don't really know how many people are in our city? Every time, let me take you tomorrow morning, if you've got the time, I can take you to our clinics, go and see the crisis. Look at how our health facilities are, how they are overstretched. Because we budget for just over 5.2 million of our residents, but at the end of the day, we sit with another 500,000 or so of people that we don't know who they come from.
So what is your message? Are you telling foreigners not to come here?
No, absolutely. The city of Johannesburg for the last 136 years built at the back of migrants, and us as a city, we want to continue at the trajectory. More especially Johannesburg. We like the 7 billion of people of the world to come to Johannesburg. But they must come here legally. When they're here, they must respect our laws. If you, for some reason, you happen to land in South Africa, you don't have documents, you're running from despot somewhere in the world, it is the responsibility of national government to immediately issue you with the necessary documentation if you qualify. And there are, I can assure you, Jane, there are people in this country who are here in our country with no documentation.
I know,
no government in the world will
back in Rwanda, you were blaming on the drugs problem in this country on foreigners, you say, because of our open porous borders, criminal syndicates are coming to our country to destroy our communities. I mean, doesn't that again play into the rhetoric that foreigners are coming in to just bring in drugs, and not everyone does it?
Tell me, Jane, are we going to solve our country's problems by not confronting the challenges that we are facing? I'm saying is because of these porous borders, our nation, our people, our families are broken up on a daily basis by the type of drugs that are here. How do these drugs don't just reliquify from the sky?
The people who are listening to your words are taking...
Why do you want to listen to not what someone says? You want to just interpret...
I know, but you as a mayor, I mean, you have a responsibility.
Yes, that's why I've got that responsibility.
To hold the moral high ground.
Absolutely.
And this is not holding the moral high ground.
It's actually interesting what you're saying.
Everyone who comes in full of drugs.
Actually, that's wonderful for you, for me as a mayor, not to lie to the people. Must obviously confront the issues, the evil that is confronting our people, and deal with it in a direct kind of fashion, not to really play political game that we don't have a problem. In the meantime, our families are breaking. 1 in 3 of our people are unemployed. We're sitting with almost 220 informal settlements. We've got hijacked buildings in the inner city.
I'm going to stop you there for a moment because we've got a caller on the line. Warren from Pretoria, go ahead.
Hi, Jane, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Warren. What's your question?
Okay, Jane, let's be honest and quite frankly give the honor to the mayor. The mayor is doing an absolutely fantastic job. The fact of the matter is we've got a poor ANC that is hiding behind xenophobia instead of doing the right thing. The mayor is doing absolutely the right thing. First and foremost, have you ever seen the number of hijacked vehicles at the SAPS 30 in Messina? Have you ever seen how many people around the city of Johannesburg who just roam around doing nothing, robbing people? Have you ever been to Nelson Mandela Bridge? Have you ever been just around Doornfontein, my dear? You have never been there. Ask the mayor there. Ask the mayor there. He will tell you.
Yeah, I don't know what your point is. I mean, who are these people? Are they South Africans or foreigners or a bit of both? I don't think all the
majority, my dear, is foreigners. Yeah. Majority is foreigners. Let me tell you something. It's very, very painful when you have to look for a criminal who doesn't exist on our system, who rapes people. Do you remember what happened at Kensington Park? Those two, poor ladies who were raped by Zimbabweans who after that fled our country back to Zimbabwe. How are those ladies feeling right now? How are they feeling right now? People coming.
Thank you, Warren. But okay. Let me take what you say. Thank you very much. I mean, the crime, which is real. But do you think that putting crime and rape and all of that on foreigners is sending a bad message? Because I think South Africans are doing pretty well on their own in that regard.
I think, Jane, let's do ourselves a favor as human beings. Let us not spin issues. You listen to me. I'm telling you the challenge that we are facing. And no one has ever ascribed all the problems of the city of Johannesburg to foreign nationals. We've got fantastic foreign nationals in the city coming from all over the world. And they respect our laws. We're talking about a small very small percentage. It is for that reason, you remember last year, in 2016, after I made the statement around the taking over the city of Johannesburg, turning it into a construction site, and then obviously people who are prepared not to listen and says the mayor is xenophobic and the whole thing went all over. I had a very constructive engagement with the Nigerian government here not far from here. Positive engagement that please, we always have a small percentage of our people destroying. And it's up to your government to ensure that those people are punished and are punished severely. Because we got, like, just to give an example.
Is there an understanding of your office of the sort of people working in and around the city of Johannesburg, like the informal traders? I mean, do they feel that they are protected by you? Do they feel that they have a place in our society?
Well, you're going to be protected by the government that I lead for as long as I think you respect our laws, respect the rule of law in the city of Johannesburg. You are here legally. If you're not, make sure that you go and get Home Affairs to sort out your papers. If not, unfortunately. And at the same time, you're a South African, you break our laws. Will show no mercy to anyone, regardless of whether you're a South African or not, because crime is not only committed by foreign nationals. Crime is committed by South Africans as well. So crime is crime, and it's got to really be punished. There's got to really be consequences.
Okay, so maybe those sort of comments about the drugs and all of that should be limited to the few people that are committing it.
That is what we do. That's what I'm trying to say, is that if we learn to not exaggerate, that I give you the effect of the type of challenge that we are facing, and then you associate it with xenophobia. What has xenophobia got to do with the rule of law, with people being documented? 2 weeks ago, I was talking to one of our EMS senior official, who is a church minister as well, in Botswana, quite recent, spent the weekend in jail. Went to Botswana, got there on Saturday in the afternoon, went to the shopping center, obviously left his passport at the hotel. Locked up for some reason. I don't know how he doesn't know how they picked up that he was not from Botswana. They obviously requested his identity documentation. The poor man was released on Monday. His friends, he went to go and run his church, normal church service. They brought this paperwork. He only got released on Monday in a court of law by magistrates here in Botswana. I'm not talking about someone who went to Botswana nationals, brought in the documentation. Unfortunately, it was over the weekend. The earliest you could really get out of prison was on Monday morning. And that's a loss of Botswana. Do you judge that? Can you go to Zimbabwe with Jane? Can you get onto a plane or cross the Limpopo River? Going to Zimbabwe without
you were talking about
or can you go to Pakistan? Because we're not just sitting with...
We're talking about Joburg.
Can you get into a plane, go to...
Let's talk about Johannesburg, because we're running out of time. What about the billing crisis? You said it would be resolved by 2018.
Yeah.
How...
Well, I think without any doubt, we inherited a mess. Right now, as a city, you know, when we took over, I'm sure you know the type of crisis, because this thing does not, the crisis did not start with us. Are we still sitting with a crisis? We, in the city at the moment, we don't believe so, because at the moment we're receiving the average of 6,000 queries a month, and 6,000 is a lot to measure.
Well, because these were your words. You said you'd resolve it by 2018. So how are we looking?
We're making progress. The numbers are coming down. Because how do you judge success? You judge success by reducing the challenges. Right now, we're receiving an average of 6,000. We've now employed professional people, because one of the challenges that I faced, which you are aware, was the level of corruption in our billing system. People coming to your homes, illegally connecting you and asking some of our residents. Flush them out. And I'm really appealing to our national criminal justice system to ensure that all these people that we are arresting, they must face the consequences, because it's not good for us to fire people and get them arrested, and then a week later they're out on bail. The bail takes years for it to be resolved. You know, and really
can you give us a date when will it be resolved?
No, look. Jane, we bill 1.8 million every month.
Can you give me a guesstimate of when it's going to be resolved?
You're running a business. There's no way that you're going to run a business on a button.
As resolution as you can.
No, what I'm saying is you can't run a business and you tell me that you're not going to have credit queries. Please go talk to the private sector. Every day you deliver your goods to ShopRite or ShopRite Checkers or Pick and Pay. End of the month, when you do reconciliation, there'll always be queries. It depends on the level and the extent. So what I'm saying is, as a city of Johannesburg, we are reducing the numbers big time. We are making sure that we listen to our residents. But to say that,
leave it there. Herman Mashaba, thank you very much. It was good to chat to you.
Wonderful. Thanks for the opportunity.
Still ahead, is the president's image as a corruption fighter tarnished? Stay with us.